Hello everyone, Luke here, and yep, I'm back doing the Promised Neverland reviews, and after correctly identifying last week that I had called it, that Songju and Lewis and the Queen were siblings, all we can do right now is find out what's going to happen next, and obviously I've read the chapter so I know what's going to happen next, but gotta keep you guys on your toes about, oh, does Luke actually know what's going on in the chapter? But yeah, of course I actually know it, but that's just enough of me rambling. We're just gonna get straight into the video right here, right now. Alright, so this will be chapter 157, titled The World is Mine. And of course, with a child like that, you know it's going to be a cliched thing for the villain of the arc or the series to say. That's precisely what the Queen says in this chapter. She says the world is mine, basically thinking herself as more of like this godlike figure at this point. She basically has gone through the same personality change as like Andrew did at the beginning of the arc. If you remember Andrew, which I don't think many people remember Andrew, but he was the guy, he was basically Peter Atari's right hand man, who was basically going to say like, right, you're in charge of exterminating these like rebellious humans. I don't care who they are, just get rid of them. And then as soon as Lucas and Hugo fought him and blew up half his face, he went through like a personality shift of where he was more ferocious and menacing. And this is precisely what the Queen has done in this particular instance. How she's basically been defeated one time and she's sort of like rejuvenated herself, and now she's gone sort of like through like a more aggressive personality change. And I don't think I'm the only one who's noticed this. How the Queen, when she was first introduced, she was very calm, very collective, and very much a person who was like, I'm in control, but I'm going to be very calm about being in control, and how nobody's going to be able to basically touch me. And now she's sort of like, I'm going to kill you, I'm going to take you, I'm going to eat you for myself, the world is mine. Anyway, let's get into the chapter. Alright, so we pick up from the revelation about who Songju is, and we go into like a flashback into his childhood. And what I really love about, and this is what I really love about our series, is like when we get to see flashbacks from a character's perspective of when they were actually younger, and get to learn more about them and get to actually open up the character to us, rather than just having them who they are right now. I loved it when Lucas and Hugo did it, and also I love it when we get it here with Songju, and we see him in a much younger state. And now I don't know where this actually takes place. It could take because demons themselves, they probably grow at a different rate to humans, so this probably takes place, I would say, maybe like 600 years ago, like 100 years after the promise was 400 years after the promise was forged, and 700 and 100 years after, it could take place 800 years ago, because they mentioned that they were basically hiding out from the Queen and everything in the last chapter for 700 years. So this probably takes place before the whole thing where he actually got possibly exiled from the royal family, because he didn't like the nature of the way they were going down the line. So yeah, we pick up with him in his youth, and caption reads, a distant memory of his past teaching. So okay, so we get Songju, and from what I see here, we have this other demon who's possibly like his teacher, possibly his mentor, showing him the ways of how it means to be a part of the royal family, what it means to do the Goomba thing, which obviously he demonstrated to Emma. Emma, when she asked him, like, I want to know how what it's like to actually kill a living creature herself. As we get Songju basically going over and attacking a human, but from the way I can perceive it here, he's like not really in the song to actually do it. He kind of has like just this blank stare of just like, I feel nothing. I feel nothing for what I've done here, and should I really feel this way? But his instructor informs him that he has done well in what he actually did to the human, basically. And the instructor goes, well done. If I did, but Songju quickly interrupts him and says, if I didn't know any better, I'd never think that it. Oh no! His instructor his instructor says that if I didn't know any better, I'd never think that this was his first song. So this is the first time that Songju has actually been set out to. Basically, it's probably he's gone to an age where he's like of age, like right. You're officially going to be going out and hunting and finding out the ways of the demon world. But it's sort of showing like he's some sort of prodigy, which makes sense considering how long he has survived. Out with just him and Musica and nobody else to actually defend them, and how strong, and it's just a testament to how strong Sonju actually is because of that statement of the fact that it's his first hunt, and just from his first hunt he was able to take down this human, no problem, and he is just a child at this point. Okay, so now we get into sort of like what Sonju's philosophy on a purpose is that even though the human is mortally wounded, he's still alive. He is still trying to survive, as his mentor goes on to confirm that, yes, that is what life is, and that is what it means to take, and that's what it means to take life. Look around you, Songju. Or Lord Songju, he calls him. So, I'm guessing they kind of have, the royal family kind of have different decrees. It's like, okay, depending on where you are in the family, you kind of like have to rise through the ranks or something like that, because Lewis, I don't think the recent chapters where Lewis was reintroduced into the story, I don't believe he was a Grand Duke then. I feel like, yeah, I'm pretty sure he wasn't a Grand Duke then, or an Archduke. I feel like he probably, the older he got, the more rising through the ranks he actually got, and similar thing happening here to Songju as well. But anyway, continuing on, they go, look around you, Lord Songju. All of this is life. Everything that lives is precious life, created by the gods. We all are. Life hunts other life. All life is connected to each other. Okay, so this is basically this is probably how Songju through this philosophy is like. We're all on equal playing fields here. We're no different from each other, and that's probably what his mentor actually thinks. Like, you're a you've got a life, but this human's got a life, but you're sort of your life. You proving yourself to have much more of a natural instinct to survive by killing this human and being able to like actually consume his meat. But we're all connected, and one day maybe someone will actually be able to match you and even kill you. And that's just the way of life. That's the nature of life. That one animal basically has to eat another to survive, and that's basically the philosophy. A majority of the team herself, but mostly Songju has, whereas the Queen has more of a philosophy of like, no, we're superior. Nobody else is equal to us. Everyone else is below us, so we can basically do what we want, rather than actually keeping the natural balance of the world that is being presented to us here. At least that's what I'm interpreting happening here. That Songju is feeling this of like, look like all around me. Everything is life, created by the gods, and therefore we should all be sacrificed for the gods. But it's a case of who has the stronger will to survive in order to actually be the one to sacrifice that being that actually died for the sake of the gods. This is further evident by the mentor going on to him and saying, the hunt is borrowed. All life is borrowed. And at first Songju doesn't quite understand it, because he's like, huh? All life is borrowed, but I thought I had my own life. And it's like, and the mentor's basically saying to him, no, your life is borrowed. You were brought into this world by the gods, so therefore a part of the god is basically within you, and therefore you've basically borrowed a part of the god's spirit or essence in order for you to actually have a chance to be on this earth, in the same way these humans have basically borrowed a piece of their god to actually have a chance to live on this world. But eventually all things are going to come back to the god, and it's basically just the Christian references here is apparent, because in Christian mythology or in Catholic mythology, it's basically like you live your life on earth, you're brought into this world by God. God brought you into this world, or basically another human gave you a part of God, gave a part of God to you for you to actually have your life on earth, and then eventually your spirit or soul goes back to be with the God. Essentially, that's basically the impression that I'm getting from here, and made further evidence by the mentor going, it is not a gift. Everything on this world is simply what we borrow from the gods. That is why we must pay our respects, and for all life and all of the surrounding and all of the life surrounding us, always extend your hand to share with others, and thus whatever you borrow from the gods shall be returned to them. Again, that's what they say. That again, like I said, the Christian and Catholic mythologies are just being presented greatly here, of the fact that yes, all of this around us on this earth, including our earth as well. If you believe in that. Now, I grew up as a Catholic, and while I sometimes have to question it, I still believe in God to some extent. And basically, the whole idea is that basically my life is that I'm living out my life, I'm borrowing it, but eventually I know that it's going to be returned to the gods, at least going to be returned to God, going to be returned to the Lord. Or I also believe in reincarnation as well. I'm up to other interpretations, but basically they're two possibilities that I believe in. Or I believe that our spirit just a part of our spirit is still alive on earth at the end of it, and then another part of it goes back to the gods as well. But we still have a presence on earth in a form of an afterlife as well. That's as far as my religious beliefs go. So in case you want my own perspective on it, that's where it goes, and I believe that's the perspective that they're going on here. The authors are going on here that everyone on this world is borrowed, and we should all extend our hands to each other, because we all know that we're eventually going to be returned to the gods. And that's probably the philosophy that made Songju question the royal family's philosophy of the fact that we're gods in and of ourselves and we can't be touched. So basically the royal family perceived themselves as gods, and Songju didn't agree with that, because he saw it in a different way. He saw it based on what his mentor taught him, is that all life is equal, no life is above all else. And that's probably the reason why he initially helped the humans as well, but also the fact that he would also get wild humans. But I'm pretty sure even if he did have wild humans, he'll probably give them a chance to actually kill him, in the same way that Lewis gave Emma and the others a chance to actually end him and give him an actual challenge. I feel like that's probably what's going to happen with Songju, and he has a similar philosophy in the way that Lewis did. Continuing on, the mentor continues to say, that is the order that we must protect. So basically the order of the fact that everything is connected, and therefore you should reach out to others that you may perceive as being your equals, being below you, because we're all connected in that way. And eventually Songju does perform the Gunpa, and the way they perceive it is that the human soul is basically being returned to the god, and being left the body being left as an empty husk that they can actually eat and consume themselves in order to go on and continue until somebody eventually comes along and takes away their soul, essentially. But anyway, that's the end of the flashback. As we well, not exactly the end of the flashback, we get like a little bit of a panel. We get sort of like the flashback ending, and then move back into the main conflict as we see the mentor going on to say, that is the path we must take to reach eternal prosperity. You are a child of the king. Never forget that. Even if you yourself are not able to become king, you must protect and support your ruler. As we see, from what I can see here, is that the mentor is actually taken away from what I can see, is the king and the demon queen, the current demon queen, not Songju's mother, but the actual demon queen, basically his sister, the sister queen. And even though the mentor say you must protect and support your ruler, I feel like because the mentor was actually taken away from him, and it was the close thing that he had to an actual best friend before he actually found out about Musica, that's probably what took him off, even though it was kind of the thing that you must support and protect your ruler. Or maybe it's No, he is definitely talking about the king here, but maybe that's a reason why Songju basically went off the king, the fact that they killed his sensei, and he was the one that taught him everything. And it's like, well, if they're gonna kill you, then who am I supposed to protect? Like, who am I supposed to believe in? If you taught me to believe everything, that all life is equal, and they're taking away my teacher, the one that's taught me everything, basically my mentor figure, then who else am I supposed to turn to in that situation? We get the title page as the Demon Queen and Songju stare down, and Emma Ray and Norman are just looking on like shocked, like, what, little brother? As if this was probably the last thing that they expected to hear as like a revelation, as the Queen goes on to say, the baby brother is really the most foolish. You're saying you'll kill me. Ever since you were born, you were taken prisoner by that ancient faith, and rebelled against the royal family. So yeah, I basically called it that. That's basically what happened. That Songju, when he was little, didn't agree with what the royal family was actually doing, and so he sort of turned to other people, and that's probably what happened in the flashback. That they found out what was actually going on. Like, it was probably a secret that only Songju, Musica, and his mentor actually knew, that Songju was basically being teaching the ways of a different way of life from the royal family, that basically probably were deciding to brainwash him, like to insert them into his ranks, and he probably just always rebelled against that. Like, he never wanted anything to do with that. He's like, no, this is the way I am choosing. I don't agree with what you're doing. And the queen goes on to say the trio took the cursed blood and escaped. And he basically probably found out what they were doing to Musica and thought, this is actually wrong. We're getting out of here right now. We're gonna find a new path, and we're gonna eventually come back when we're actually confident enough to actually come back and actually take them on and take them down and basically end this whole regime themselves. So something similar to what Giran did, except it's a bit more personal in this regard. So yeah, I basically called it that. Songju didn't like the way that they actually did it. That they were actually going, the royal family. He just basically decided to turn his back on them and get out of there. Ever since he was probably being mentored by that other demon. And Songju's rebuttal to this is very similar to Giron's, how the only traitors were you people, as in referring to the royal family, like the royal family and the 5 regiment houses. All I was doing was protecting the order of things. So basically, he was probably doing what Giron wanted to, like, actually keep the balance of peace between not only the humans and demons, but also the demon royal families and the lower ranks, and basically like, look, we need to keep balance here and keep order and stability. Otherwise, it's just going to all collapse on itself eventually. And he goes on to say that damn promise corrupted everything. Oh, okay, that's different. Okay, so all I was doing was protecting the order of it. Okay, so maybe the order things that he's talking about is when they were actually attacking humans, and basically the royal family was like that. Basically, they all came to the agreement, like, we're not going to eat humans anymore. So that's probably what he's referring to. What he's referring to here, like the order of things, like humans and demons are always constantly in locks with each other, in battling with each other to maintain balance in his way, in the way that he saw it. So that's basically. So maybe that flashback that took place over 1,000 years ago. That probably took place over 1,000 years ago, before the promise was actually even brought into fruition itself. In that regard, that's probably what is going on here. Like, he didn't like the promise that was made, because he felt like humans and demons, whilst they should be natural enemies, they should also learn from each other as well. In the essence of being locked in combat with each other, because know thy enemy, anyone. That's probably the philosophy he was going by in this regard. And he goes on to say, me taking the cursed blood was so I could stop you from monopolising on it. And that actually does make sense, because the royal family and the 5 houses were just basically monopolising on Musica's blood, and basically trying to elevate them to the status of gods in that regard as well. But that's very interesting. The damn promise corrupted everything. So basically corrupted their way of life, and the way of life that they had been ever since the dawn of time, just being in constant battle with humans. Songju eventually concludes his rebuttal to the Queen by going, "You really do make me sick." And who could blame him? Who could blame him at this point? They've just done so many horrific things. This royal family and the 5 regiment houses, that it's like, oh my god, you guys need to actually be brought down a peg or two. And the Queen goes on to say, fine, nothing you will do will be able to concur me, though. Again, emphasising the fact that even if they tried to talk to the Queen, it wouldn't matter anyway. Like, it's either kill or be killed at this point, and they all know it at this point. Like, there's nothing they can do about it. Even though Emma probably did have ideas of how she was going to negotiate with the Queen, it probably would have made a difference in the same way it didn't make a difference with the way she tried to negotiate with Lewis himself as well. Anyway, moving back to Musica, she goes on to say, Emma, Ray Norman, without delay, you should take that boy and step back a bit. So, like, she's like, oh my god, this is going to get crazy, because I know how strong the Queen is, and I know how strong Songju is. So when these two actually clash, brace yourselves for basic impacts at this point. And it's very interesting how this is getting a perspective of Norman as well, because we see Norman just looking off, and he's probably thinking like, why is this demon being concerned for us when she's supposed to be our mortal enemy? And that's probably the gears that are going on in his head, which, if that's the case, that makes it much better than him just being like, I don't want to kill the demons anymore, basically. Which again is one of the strangest character shifts I have seen in a while, and I am not going to deny that it wasn't perfect. As a lot of people probably won't deny that wasn't handled very well. But if this had actually come before that, then it probably would have made it a bit more sense how Norman is actually seeing demons actually cooperating with humans and being able to like shift his perspective in that way. That I could at least understand at that point. As Norman tends to Sassy, who was the one that Yusuke was actually referring to, Ray asks, "What's going on, Yusuke? Just what is that queen?" And she goes on to explain that Queen Falimia. I still cannot pronounce that name for my life. But anyway, the Queen has two cores. The first core was the one that was broken just before. The second core is the resurrected one. As Emma and Norman are just looking in shock like this, and again, this is very similar to what I said in the last chapter, how it's like the regenerators from Resident Evil 4, how they all have different cores, and you have to kind of like in the game, you have to kind of like shoot each core for them to actually be completely obliterated at that point. Otherwise, they're just going to continuously regenerate. And again, like I said, the regenerators are the most terrifying creatures I've seen in any horror game as well. And yes, Resident Evil 4, I consider it a horror game, even though there's a lot of action. There's still a horrific element, from like the Chainsaw Man to the Bella Sisters, which were the two Chainsaw Sisters. That got me like on the edge of my seat when I faced them again for the first time in years, and especially the two regenerators that you find in that like little tunnel area, and there's two of them like actually coming after you and being really fast about it, and they're going and just the music emphasizes just how scary they are. But yeah, basically the queen is basically like the regenerators if you want a comparison in that regard. As Musica goes on to say, it's a secret hereditary traits that was passed down by the royal family from the founding father to the next generation and so on. Okay, so it seems to be like it's passed down through the lines. But as Musica will go on to explain that only a select group can actually attain this ability. Like not all of the royal family can actually attain this ability. It's only through a select number. And she goes on to say, I don't know much else about it, but for such a child to be born to be born into the royal family is extremely rare. And Emma questions if Songju actually possesses this ability, and Musica goes on to confirm that he does not. Okay, so Songju only has his one core in his eye, and that's it. He doesn't have a second core that can regenerate his body in the same way that it regenerated the Queen. And she goes on to say the same for the other demons. The only child of the previous king to have two cores is Regilathalia. Now that's very interesting, because she goes on to say, I don't know much else about it. So maybe that's maybe a clue to the fact that Lewis probably has it as well, and she just never knew about that. But I'm pretty sure that it's been confirmed. I'm pretty sure that in the 700 years that she has known Songju, or maybe over the 1,000 years that she's known Songju, I'm pretty sure that she would be able to determine that yes, he does not have a second core himself, or maybe he does, and it's just not awakened yet, because nobody's been able to take him down. So they've probably forgotten the fact that he probably has this ability, and it's probably the same thing for all the kids of the previous king, and not just the demon queen currently. So maybe that will be a twist that we'll find out that Lewis actually has a second core, and Musica just never knew anything about it. So as Songju faces down the queen, he goes on to think to himself, things aren't looking good. I don't want to get close in on her. She's a monster. She's completely different than how she was before. It's as if she was a different being before the resurrection. And I'm glad they actually pointed this out, the fact that the Queen's become somewhat more of a monster before she actually underwent her resurrection. And so maybe, like Sundry says, so this is the power of the second core. I've never heard of a power such ridiculous. So maybe the second core is something that's like something that influences her personality in some way, and makes her a bit more ferocious and a bit more of a sort of like a wild demon in that regard. Sundry goes on to say that it's fine. Fortunately for me, the first core has already been destroyed, and he thinks about Emma and Norman and going, humans are quite the surprise. Again, I love that about Sundry's character. Just that one little line of dialogue makes me respect him even more, because he respects the humans, even though they are naturally enemies in his eyes, but he still respects them and values them as worthy opponents to his actual race himself. But anyway, he continues on to say, there is only one more core. The problem is its position. Only the Queen would know where it is, but I was able to get a clue from it just before. In that moment, there was a specific place she slightly twisted her body from, and I love again the significance of the fact that the Sundry is actually calling her the Queen. I don't think it's meant to be a sign of respect. In fact, it's not meant to be a sign of respect. It's meant to show that he has, even though they are blood related, he doesn't view them as family in the same way that he probably views Musica as family, and that's clear representation of it, because if he did, then he would be saying only Regina Fowler, blah blah blah. Basically the Queen's name. He would basically be saying the Queen's name rather than just the Queen herself. Sundry goes on to deduce that the second core is most likely somewhere in her stomach, and this may actually be a reference to the original Digimon series, Digimon Adventure, the first series of Digimon, where we had Myoismon being resurrected as a much more powerful, much more ferocious monster, and and the way to actually destroy him was actually right in his stomach. There was like this creature that just like was like this big black blob of thing, and the Digides had to like actually attack that thing in order to actually completely destroy it. So again, this is again, if that's a reference to Digimon, the fact that the Queen's second core is in her stomach, if that's a reference to Myoismon, then pretty good respect in that regard, but it probably is just a coincidence. But if it is actually supposed to be a reference, then I just respect the authors even more for making that actual reference itself, and thinking like, why can we put the core? Oh wait, didn't they do that in Digimon? Yeah, we like Digimon. That's probably in there. But anyway, that's just an observation that I had, that it's probably just a coincidence, but it's a very interesting observation that I had in that regard. Sundry goes on to say, but she's a general monster, so naturally the chances of her being able to move it isn't off the tables either. Okay, so he's not ruling out the fact that, okay, because she's a monster, she can probably make up her own rules about how her body functions, and she could probably just move it to whatever part of her body that she actually decides if she feels like it's going to be in danger in that sense. And he goes on to continue stating to himself that no, that doesn't matter. I'll slice through it before then. In one decisive shot, I shall destroy her. But before he can actually destroy her, she actually just moves back like at super fast speed, which again is an ability that all the royal families have. Like Sundry, Lewis, and the Queen actually have this ability. So like she just moves back fast, and they actually observe that how fast she's actually moving back as Sundry tries to strike at her. She tries to strike. Oh no! He actually does manage to get a shot, so she starts to move back, but he's like, and he actually is able to slice her body clean in half. But of course, the Queen's not going to be down at that point, as he's like getting frustrated at the fact that I got her, but at the same time I didn't get her. What's going on here? And he's as his spear gets like encased in just like this sticky liquid, in the same way that the Queen did when she was facing down Giron a few chapters ago. Which, from what I can tell, is that as soon as the Queen absorbs anyone, she probably gains their abilities after her metamorphosis. As Norman observes this and assures us that it is the same liquid, that the same adhesive that Giron was actually using, we see the Queen's mouth, face, just like get a mouth sort of like on her forehead, sort of like right here, and her body just starts like using the adhesive, it starts to actually regenerate itself back together. So it's sort of like a liquid form at this point, like a liquid snake, just like getting its body back together. As Songju dictates that he can't escape before escaping from the Queen, which is very weird that they actually had that, as he's able to avoid the Queen's initial attack. Like, she's got her arm coming down on him, and he's able to just move completely out of the way, jump over and get out of the way just in the nick of time before the Queen is actually able to strike him. But she's able to actually get his spear, and she does inform him that she does plan to give it back, although that's probably a lie on her part. Oh no, yeah, she actually does give it back. She's like, it's even more horrific than I thought. She's like, don't worry, I'll give it back by stabbing you with it. As she throws the spear right at Songju, connects him with his shoulder, so it's like and just jumps back as he's just thrown back with just sheer force. It's just got boom, 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 boom. Across the ground, as everyone's like, Songju! Even Norman at this point is like getting worried about him, which is very rare for Norman to be actually getting worried about a demon of all creatures. The Queen goes on to confirm that her core, second core, is currently in her stomach. But so what? Them knowing that information doesn't change anything, and they can't do anything about it, and Songju will be the end of the royal family, and he can join the others. How exhilarating, she goes on to say. This is the power. Absolutely overwhelming power. Oh my god. That just reminds me of Palpatine from Star Wars, which, by the way, I'm still debating whether or not to see the Rise of Skywalker, based on what I've heard, or based on what I've heard and how Palpatine does come back. I'm like, I'm not really sure about it. I'm more interested of the fact that when they do actually get to stories from the Old Republic, because there's so many stories from the Old Republic that they could actually use to bring into the canon of the new Disney Star Wars canon, and even from Star Wars The Old Republic video game, there are plenty of stories to choose from there, like the Sith Warrior story they could easily do, the Jedi Knight story they could easily do, the Sith Inquisitor story they could so easily do. There's so many things, like even the Trooper just like getting their own team together to take down this not only this tyrant, but also a corrupt former team, like actually going down onto the corrupt former team to actually bring them to justice. Something like that they could actually use. But anyway, that line of, this is power, absolutely overwhelming power! I'm just expecting it to like just shoot lightning out of her hands at this point, which probably the Queen could actually do. Well, it's not actually iron, it's just sticky web. But anyway, going back to the core itself, I believe that even though Songju actually just slashed the body, like the core was actually like covered in so much adhesive that even if he did slash it, it would just get stuck in the adhesive like glue, like his spear, and they would have been unable to destroy it in that regard. The Queen goes on to say, "You'll never understand, Songju. With such an amazing gift, I can't help but laugh. It's not that I was revived. I was reborn. I'm overflowing with power. Chills are running throughout my entire body. But it's memories, strength, or be it memories, strength, or anything else. I could draw every single bit of what I've eaten." So yeah, basically anything that she's eaten and consumed, she could basically just draw out. So the abilities of the other demons, like she could just draw them out whenever she wants at this point, because she's absorbed them and she's been reborn, and they're basically now a part of her conscience, a metamorphosis, as she were, that she underwent, as demonstrated when we have, I believe the Queen, like the Queen's hands, gives us a demonstration of how this, when her hand just starts bulging up to like sort of like get to gear on perspectives. She continues on saying, "You just don't get it. I've reached the highest state of being." So basically, she's proclaiming herself to have this god complex at this point, which we all know people with god complexes, they're gonna go down eventually. It happened to Light Yagami, it happened to Yua, it happened to Aizen, it's gonna happen to the Queen herself. And continuing on, she goes, "This is what it means to be someone chosen by the world. Everything in this world is mine. All life is nourishment for me. My retainers, my citizens, my traitors, enemies, and human livestock, my parents and siblings, everything. Everything. I will eat more than anyone and be stronger than anyone else. No. It's not enough. I can still eat more. It's not enough. The cursed blood. and Gracefield. As we see her face just like twist and contort into like this monstrous form, which resembles like a dog, wild demon sort of creature. As Emma and Norman are just and Ray are just looking on in shock and horror, like, what the fuck are we looking at right now? As they're like, as Sonju immediately understands what is actually going to happen at this point. He's like, "Get back, Musica!" As his arm begins to regenerate, and the Demon Queen just like brings her claws down, but for some reason she actually can't. But for some reason the Queen actually can't kill Musica at this point. So she's like got the claws like this, and she's like got it in between. From what I can see here, like overcasting Musica's head, and Musica's just standing there like nonchalantly, not even caring in the world that there's like this giant behemoth of a monster staring her down right at this moment in time. And the Queen goes on to say, "What's with that look? Why do you not retreat? You poor thing. Why?" Yusuke's actually saying this. "You poor thing. Why? Why are you so hungry?" And that's where the chapter ends. So, not as interesting to me as the previous chapter, but we still got some fairly decent action here. We got a demonstration of like just how unstoppable the Queen is at this point, and what the nature of the second core is, and how gathering up all those like why she was eating everyone to gain their powers and regenerate. And we also got a flashback on Sanji's perspective and his perspective on everything in terms of like what his views are, what his philosophy is, and how he truly views the royal family at this point, basically as traitors to what the demons actually stood for. Now I have no idea where this is actually going to go at this point, like whether Musica is actually going to reveal something in the next chapter, and maybe the chapter after that the Queen is finally taken down, and then we get the reveal that Lewis was actually alive this whole time. I'm still cautious. I'm still optimistic that Lewis is still alive, because we didn't see his body when Goldie Pond was destroyed, so there's very possibility that he did manage to survive, based on the fact that he probably has a second core himself. But anyway, guys, that's it for this chapter. What did you think of it? Let me know. Like, subscribe, comment, all that jazz, and this will be Luke signing off. Later, guys.